Hi, my name is Mike Farrell. I am a friend of Marie Dean's, or was. Wish I still was. Um, I'm trying to record this thing and not having much luck, so I hope it works. I first met Marie in the '80s, I guess, when I was associated with the Southern Coalition on Jails and Prisons, as she was as well. Subsequent to that, she went to Virginia and opened the Virginia Coalition on Jails and Prisons. And in the mid '80s, I was. She asked me to come to Virginia to meet with a man on death row whom she believed to be innocent. And his name is Joe Giratano. I came to know Joe through Marie. She was dedicated to his getting justice in his case. And she had found some money. The backstory was she found some money, hired an investigator to look at his case to see if it could be reduced from death to life with the elimination of the future danger special circumstance. And the inspector, the fellow who the investigator, came back to her and said that, well, first things first. What about the fact that this guy's not innocent and not guilty? So she was stunned to hear that, but he pointed out evidence that had never been looked at in the case because Joe had confessed to the crime, thinking himself evil. He had awakened from a blackout and found these two women with whom he had been rooming dead and assumed he had killed them. Uh, According to the evidence, he had not. So Marie then began this campaign to get him off death row and tried to recruit me. I agreed, being an abolitionist, and came to know Marie through the years of working on Joe's case and some other cases as well. She was an extraordinary, extraordinary woman, deeply dedicated to understanding and supporting the humanity inside people on death row, whether they were innocent or guilty. And in the case of the innocent, she wanted to see them freed, of course. If they were guilty, she wanted to see them commuted to life in prison, for example, as an option. But she thought, and I believe today, that the death penalty has no place in a civilized society, and therefore she would do everything she could to see to it that these people were not executed. And when they were, she was the last, sometimes the last person they saw. She was just an extraordinarily dedicated woman who insisted on recognizing the humanity of people, who even people who had done horrifying things, and it caused her great grief to see the pain that they were in, and it caused her great pain to see that the state eliminated these people, regardless of their mental condition, regardless of their guilt or innocence in some cases. Um, Marie was a champion of humanity. Marie was a woman, warm, thoughtful, southern, sweet, dedicated believer, a deeply spiritual woman who believed that human beings have value and that they shouldn't be summarily done away with by the state. She in fact, the Virginia Coalition on Jails and Prisons not only worked with the people on death row, with the inmates on death row. They worked in some cases counseling guards who, as a result of having taken part in an execution, being part of the death squad, as we thought of them, suffered emotionally, suffered great grief emotionally. And she would calm them and work to help them reconcile themselves with what they had had to do, all in the hope eventually of getting them to convert to the idea that people in prison behind bars were human beings still and deserved to be treated as human beings. And working with Marie for a number of years, we finally succeeded through the good graces of the Governor Wilder at the time, legal counsel, Mac McFarland. We got lucky, and the governor interceded and commuted Joe off death row. However, he didn't free him, even though his petition acknowledged his possible innocence. He commuted him to life with parole available after a number of years, a parole that has still not been granted as of this reading. And it was a great victory in a sense because the Grim Reaper was stayed, and we were able to see to it that Joe was moved to a better prison where he excelled, did good work, helped other prisoners, and Marie kept her work. She kept doing her work on behalf of the other prisoners on death row, as well as supporting Joe and doing as much as she could to benefit people who were thought of as the least among us. This was a good woman, a good human being. Really, I used to think of her as the angel of death row. She hated the term. She didn't think of herself as being that extraordinary, but she was quite extraordinary in terms of her compassion, in terms of her understanding, in terms of her commitment. She maintained and insisted that human beings were worth the time, the effort, and the energy necessary to see to it that they got what they deserved in the best sense of the word. And she also, in the same process, being a murder victim's family member herself, her I believe either stepmother or mother-in-law was murdered, a woman she loved. And she was grieved by the process that they went through to find, capture, and try and sentence to death the man who killed her. And she thought there was something terribly wrong with this whole process, which really set her on the road to abolition. And she became one of the great movers and shakers in the abolition movement. And she also was the instigator, the formulator maybe, of the murder victims' families for reconciliation, people who didn't believe, even though a loved one had been murdered, didn't believe that the perpetrator must die, but believed that the perpetrator should be brought to justice, put in prison, treated if possible, helped if possible, but not, as she said, you don't stoop to the level of the committer of a terrible crime, and called that justice. So Marie formed Murder Victims' Families for Reconciliation, a victims' family organization that works for abolition and continues to do its work today. She was a great writer, she had a great wit about her, and a great sense of both the drama and the comedy of the work she was doing. And I encouraged her to write, which she did sporadically. I wanted her to write a book, which she never succeeded in doing, but many of her writings are incorporated in the book you're learning about now. So I hope you will take advantage of this opportunity and meet this fabulous woman who did such extraordinary work on behalf of the humanity of our society, on behalf of the better angels of our society. Angel, a term she did she wouldn't accept, no matter how you tried to award it to her. But caring, thoughtful, giving, meaningful, compassionate, brave woman that she was. She deserves to be remembered and to be honored by all of us. She spent time in prisons. She spent much too much time in prisons and on the road, she and I together in some instances. She was fearless. She would speak to anybody, governors, presidents, judges, it didn't matter. She would speak out on behalf of the humanity and the people who were being charged with terrible crimes. She would see to it that every opportunity for justice that she had any ability to effect would be met with every bit of energy she could summon. And she recruited attorneys, she converted judges, she helped people on death row Some of them who had committed terrible crimes and admitted it. Some of them had committed terrible crimes and hadn't admitted it. Some of whom had not committed terrible crimes but were innocent, in fact, of the crime for which they'd been convicted and sentenced to death. Marie was the kind of human being it makes you good, makes you better to know. The kind of human being who invested herself in the idea that human beings are valuable without excuse me, without lauding herself in any way. She was really quite well. She was simply not someone who would accord to herself the kinds of qualities that she would accord to others. She didn't feel that was her place. She was fundamentally decent, extraordinarily intelligent, compassionate, thoughtful, caring, a good woman, Marie Deans, and I think a revolutionary in many instances, and a person who changed people's lives simply by the thoughtfulness and decency that she showed. I hope you'll enjoy reading this book and getting to know Marie Deans. I hope more people will emulate her behavior and her thoughts and find ways to put their own energies to work on behalf of the humanity in all of us.